your dog shouldn't be off-leash." That's what they shouted at my 12-year-old son on our own property. Then Shadow, my military-trained K9, leaped into action. You should have seen those HOA Bullies' faces when 110 pounds of elite protection soared through the air between them and my boy. Those clipboard-wielding tyrants thought they could intimidate a quiet kid while his dad was away. One perfectly executed protection maneuver later, and they couldn't back away fast enough. My son stood his ground on that dusty road, hands in his pockets, while his four-legged guardian taught those HOA officials a lesson they'll never forget. My name is Jake Miller, 42, retired Special Forces K9 handler. 20 years of combat experience couldn't prepare me for my toughest mission, raising my 12-year-old son, Ethan, alone after losing my wife, Sarah, to cancer 3 years ago. The grief transformed my once outgoing boy into a withdrawn soul who rarely spoke above a whisper. When I retired, bringing Shadow home wasn't optional. It was essential. This 110 pounds German Shepherd had taken a bullet for me in Afghanistan, saved 12 American lives in a mountain ambush, and earned special dispensation to retire with our family. More importantly, he was the silent guardian who watched over Ethan through the darkest days of our loss. My commanding officer still tells the story of how Shadow saved an entire patrol in the mountains of Afghanistan. We'd been ambushed in a narrow valley, pinned down by enemy fire from multiple positions. While the rest of us took cover, Shadow detected an approaching enemy combatant from our blind side. Without hesitation, he neutralized the threat, giving us precious seconds to reposition. That day, he saved 12 American lives. The military rarely allows handlers to adopt their K9 partners, but Shadow had earned his retirement alongside me. During our final deployment, he took a bullet for me, nearly dying on a helicopter evacuation. After his recovery, my commanding officer signed special dispensation papers, recognizing the unbreakable bond we shared. From the time Ethan was a baby, I'd conditioned Shadow to be his protector. I still remember the first time I placed my infant son's blanket near Shadow's bed, letting him absorb the scent. Throughout Ethan's childhood, I'd run protection drills, teaching Shadow to recognize various scenarios where Ethan might need intervention. By the time Ethan could walk, Shadow was shadowing his every move, a silent, vigilant guardian. The connection between them began during my deployments, when video calls home always ended with my son asking to see his dog. When Sarah's cancer progressed, Shadow seemed to sense the shifting dynamics. He began sleeping outside Ethan's room rather than mine, as if understanding his protective services were needed elsewhere. After we lost her, that bond became Ethan's lifeline. Sarah had been the heart of our family, a pediatric nurse whose compassion touched everyone around her. When the diagnosis came, she faced it with the same grace she'd shown her young patients. "Don't let Ethan lose his voice," she'd made me promise in her final weeks. "He retreats inside himself when he's hurting. Don't let him stay there." It was a promise I struggled to keep as I watched my son withdraw further into silence after her passing. Our move to Oakhaven Estate 6 months ago seemed perfect, 5 acres on the outskirts of a planned community where Ethan could have both space to heal and proximity to good schools. The property came with heritage fruit trees, a small barn, and a chicken coop that the previous owners had maintained for over a decade. The real estate listing prominently mentioned small-scale agricultural use permitted, a critical factor in our decision. "This place will be good for both of you," our real estate agent had assured us. Stable community, good neighbors, reasonable HOA, just keeps the property value steady without micromanaging. She'd seemed so confident, and the property itself, with its sprawling oak trees and winding dirt roads, felt like somewhere we could begin to rebuild. What the listing failed to mention was that Oakhaven's architectural committee had become a 2-person dictatorship. Marjorie Albright, in her early 30s, a luxury real estate agent with political aspirations, and Richard Hayes, 32, her business partner with dreams of developing vacation rentals throughout the community. Both wielding their HOA positions like weapons against anyone who didn't fit their vision for Oakhaven. I'm reserved by nature, disciplined with firm principles. I believe in authority but also in respect. Our first month passed peacefully as I established our home with military precision, immaculate landscaping, freshly painted exteriors, meticulous maintenance that exceeded every HOA standard. Ethan slowly developed his routine, morning chores with the 6 heritage breed chickens, tending the vegetable garden his mother would have loved, and always with Shadow padding silently alongside him. The first sign that something wasn't right came in the form of repeated drive-bys. The same luxury SUV would slow near our property line, its occupants clearly observing our activities. Then came the purchase offers, informal notes suggesting they knew someone interested in our unique property who would pay cash, though always below market value. I declined politely each time, explaining we had no intention of selling. I didn't realize our property represented the final piece in Marjorie and Richard's development puzzle. Our natural spring fed the community pond, making our 5 acres crucial to their unauthorized plan to build luxury vacation rentals. They'd pressured the previous owners to sell for years without success. Now they had new targets, the grieving military family who didn't understand how things work around here. The campaign against us escalated with surgical precision. First came the drive-bys, Marjorie's luxury SUV slowing near our property while they took photos. Then anonymous complaints to animal control about dangerous dogs. Soon, Marjorie began parking at our property line when Ethan collected eggs, her voice carrying with practiced intimidation. Those chickens are technically livestock. One noise complaint, and they're gone. Each week, their tactics grew bolder, as if testing how far they could push before we broke. Shadow never needed restraint. His military training made him elite, responding instantly to commands in multiple languages and hand signals, detecting distant threats, and protecting without excessive force. The skills that once saved a platoon of soldiers overseas were now dedicated to guarding one boy. After receiving the 3rd notice threatening fines, I contacted Bill Thompson, the 72-year-old HOA president, a retired federal judge who'd built Oak Haven's first home 30 years earlier. Bill immediately recognized the harassment pattern. "I've reviewed your deed and property classification," he explained during our meeting. "Your agricultural use is explicitly permitted, your water rights are guaranteed by state law, and Shadow is classified as a service animal under federal guidelines." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You're not their first targets. 3 families have left in the past 2 years after similar campaigns. They wait until homeowners are vulnerable, then apply maximum pressure. Marjorie and Richard want control of your spring-fed pond for their vacation rental scheme." "That explains the generous purchase offers I've been receiving," I replied, thinking of the below-market value letters that arrived weekly. "Come to Tuesday's board meeting," Bill urged. "We need more reasonable voices counterbalancing their influence. They've gradually replaced board members with their allies, but your military background carries weight in this community." That Tuesday, after months of searching, I finally landed an interview with Elite Guardian Services, a private security firm seeking K-9 training consultants. The timing couldn't have been worse, directly conflicting with the HOA meeting. "You have to go to that interview, Dad," Ethan insisted, his voice quiet but determined. "I'll be fine here with Shadow. I'll feed the chickens and start dinner before you get back." At 12, Ethan showed maturity beyond his years, a side effect of losing his mother too young. I programmed my cell number on speed dial, left Mrs. Henderson's contact information on the refrigerator, and headed to my interview, unaware that Marjorie and Richard had been monitoring our routines, waiting for precisely this opportunity. Their surveillance paid off. At 4:22 p.m., they drove directly onto our property, parking behind the barn where Ethan was collecting the day's eggs from inside the chicken coop. My son watched as Richard set up a video camera on a tripod, while Marjorie organized a stack of official-looking documents. "Perfect timing," Richard remarked, adjusting his camera lens. "Daddy's away, no witnesses except the kid. This will be quick and clean." "Once we document these violations," Marjorie added, satisfaction evident in her tone, "we'll have everything needed for an emergency removal order. These nuisance animals will be gone by morning." Ethan emerged from the coop, clutching his egg basket, head down in the posture that had become habitual since his mother's death. Shadow was nowhere in sight, He'd been investigating a scent near the property line, but remained within earshot. "Young man," Marjorie's voice cut through the afternoon quiet as she marched toward him, clipboard in hand. "Your father has willfully ignored multiple violation notices regarding these illegal farm animals and dangerous dogs. We're here to execute an emergency documentation order." "My dad says we have permission for everything," Ethan whispered, not making eye contact. "Your father is deliberately violating our covenant." Richard stepped forward aggressively, raising his hand inches from Ethan's face. "Children should be seen and not heard in these matters. Now step aside while we document these violations." That confrontation happened at the entrance to our farm, the exact scene later captured in the video that went viral. Ethan was walking home, hands in his pockets, head down as usual, when Marjorie's luxury SUV screeched to a halt near the white fence line. They emerged into the bright sunlight, Marjorie in her turquoise dress and Richard in his white shirt and tie, confronting my 12-year-old son on our own property. The dust from the dirt road swirled around them, creating the dramatic backdrop that would soon become famous. Our property has white wooden fences running along both sides of this particular stretch. It's picturesque in a rural sort of way, with trees visible in the distance and our farmhouse just beyond the bend. It's also the favorite route for Ethan and Shadow's daily walks. "Young man, stop right there," Marjorie called out, clipboard in hand, her turquoise dress dark against the dusty backdrop. Richard was right beside her in his crisp white shirt and tie, camera phone already recording. Ethan froze, hands still in his pockets, unsure what to do. Shadow had run ahead to investigate something in the brush, but was still within earshot. Their escalation was methodical and relentless. After flooding our mailbox with fabricated violations about our chickens and water usage, they finally confronted Ethan directly. "We've documented multiple violations," Richard announced aggressively, pointing at my son. "Your dog has been spotted repeatedly off-leash, which violates Section 8.3 of our covenant." Each citation referenced HOA bylaws that either didn't exist or didn't apply to our property classification, a deliberate intimidation tactic. "But we are on our property," Ethan whispered, not making eye contact, shoulders hunched in that defensive posture that had become habitual. "This access road is HOA common area," Marjorie lied smoothly. "You're not allowed to use this road without permission, and that animal is too big for this area." They positioned themselves on either side of the dirt road, effectively cornering Ethan, who stood motionless between them. The confrontation was precisely as Mrs. Henderson would later describe it, two adults intimidating a child who was just trying to walk home. "Where's that dog now?" Richard demanded, taking an aggressive step closer, his fingers still pointing accusingly as he raised his arm toward Ethan. "We have reports of it threatening neighbors." Ethan's head remained down, but his voice carried clearly across the quiet road. "Shadow doesn't threaten anyone." "We'll determine that," Marjorie snapped, flipping through her clipboard. "As of today, you're in violation of 3 separate regulations. We're issuing an emergency removal order for that animal." What happened next occurred so quickly that Mrs. Henderson's video had to be slowed down for the sheriff's department to fully analyze it. One moment, Ethan stood alone between 2 aggressive adults. The next, Shadow appeared in a powerful leap that carried him directly into the space between them. The German Shepherd didn't touch either adult, but his athletic jump positioned him perfectly between Ethan and the threat, exactly as he'd been trained to do. Dust swirled around his paws as he landed with military precision, his focus razor-sharp. Marjorie gasped, instinctively stepping back. Richard's arm reflexively froze midair as he locked eyes with Shadow. In the silence that followed, something remarkable happened. Ethan, still with his head down, murmured a clear command. "Sit." Shadow sat instantly in the dirt road, but didn't take his eyes off the intruders. Ethan finally raised his head, and in a firm voice that surprised even him, said, "My dad trained this dog to protect me, and he's never wrong about a threat." The transformation in the HOA members was immediate. Richard lowered his arm, taking a step back. Marjorie clutched her clipboard to her chest like a shield. Without another word, they retreated down the dirt road, occasionally glancing back to ensure the dog wasn't following. From her vantage point by the fence line, Mrs. Henderson had captured the entire confrontation on her phone. The video clearly showed the dirt road, the wooden fences, my son's still posture with hands in pockets, and Shadow's perfect protective leap, a tableau that would later become famous throughout our community. Ethan remained motionless on the dirt road, Shadow now sitting calmly at his side, watching until they disappeared around the bend. Only then did his shoulders relax slightly, his hand emerging from his pocket to rest on Shadow's head. When I returned home triumphant from my successful interview an hour later, I found Ethan sitting on our porch with Shadow's head in his lap and Mrs. Henderson beside them, her expression both concerned and proud. "You need to see this immediately," she said, extending her phone toward me. "Your son handled himself better than most adults I've known in 30 years of courtroom work." The video Mrs. Henderson captured was damning. It clearly showed the entire scene on the dirt road, Ethan standing with hands in his pockets, the two HOA members confronting him aggressively, and Shadow's dramatic leap into the frame to position himself protectively between them. The footage perfectly captured both the intimidation of a minor and Shadow's textbook protection response, a powerful leap followed by controlled deterrence without aggression, exactly as his military training specified. "I sent this to Bill Thompson already," Mrs. Henderson explained, "and to my nephew, Deputy Collins, at the Sheriff's Department." Within hours, my phone wouldn't stop ringing, calls from neighbors I'd barely met, all expressing outrage and offering support. That evening, Bill Thompson arrived at our door with Deputy Collins. "Emergency board meeting tomorrow night," Bill announced firmly. "Every homeowner needs to see this footage." What they did violated multiple HOA bylaws, not to mention state laws regarding harassment of minors. Deputy Collins nodded agreement. "I filed an initial report. We're giving them the option to accept formal trespass warnings rather than pressing charges, but that decision ultimately rests with you, Mr. Miller." I looked at Ethan, who had been listening quietly from the kitchen doorway. "What do you think, son?" "They're your chickens," they threatened. Ethan considered the question with a seriousness that reminded me painfully of his mother. "I think they should learn there are consequences," he said finally, "but I don't want to destroy their lives over eggs and chickens." The wisdom in his response brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Sarah would have been so proud of his compassion, even in the face of bullying. The following evening, we entered Oakhaven's community center to find standing room only. Every homeowner had turned out, creating the largest attendance in the HOA's history. Marjorie and Richard sat in the front row, flanked by an attorney whose expensive suit couldn't disguise his discomfort. Bill called the meeting to order, his judicial background evident in his precise, measured tone. "We're here to address serious allegations of HOA misconduct. Before we begin, I want to clarify that this meeting is being recorded and minutes will be distributed to all homeowners." When invited to speak, I kept my statement straightforward and factual. My son and I moved to Oakhaven after my retirement from Special Forces and my wife's death from cancer. Ethan has struggled with that loss. Shadow is not just a pet, he's a highly trained military K-9 who served this country through 3 combat deployments. I played Mrs. Henderson's video without commentary, allowing the images to speak for themselves. My 12-year-old son was alone on our property when 2 adults trespassed, intimidated him, and threatened to remove animals they had no authority to touch. Shadow did exactly what his training dictates, protect without escalation. At no point did he bark, growl, or display aggression. He simply positioned himself between a perceived threat and a child. The room filled with angry murmurs as the video concluded. An elderly woman rose from her seat, leaning on her cane for support. "I'm Eleanor Prescott. My husband wrote Oakhaven's original covenant 40 years ago. This HOA was created to maintain community standards and property values, not to harass families or intimidate children. I move for the immediate removal of both board members." What followed was unprecedented in Oakhaven history. Every homeowner present, including those who had previously supported Marjorie and Richard, voted unanimously for their removal from the board. Additionally, 2 new bylaws were proposed and approved on the spot. HOA representatives are expressly prohibited from approaching or addressing minor children regarding violations. All communications must be directed to adult homeowners or legal guardians. Emergency violation notices require documentation of actual covenant violations and approval from at least 3 board members before any action can